Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where we're here to discuss the end-of-year press conferences and kind of look ahead to the next season with the information we've gathered. Lots of coaching changes, lots of other news in the NFL to kind of talk about. But I guess first things first, the mega domino that kind of sprung all the rest of the change was McDonald going to Seattle as head coach, 6-year deal. Great for him. He already said that their fans are the best fans in the world, which is a little rude. But here we are. Classic coach speak, right, guys?
Oh, I mean, most definitely. I mean, what else is he supposed to say? They gave him the keys, right? Go in there and just be like, man, you guys are great, man, but Baltimore, you guys will never be Baltimore. I mean, he signed the contract already. They're not going to fire him. But I mean, I think I understand his point there. But yeah, I mean, it's a bittersweet thing. It's awesome for him. I mean, just to see him, I mean, his first year as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. Obviously, he was on the staff before that, and then had that year in Michigan, came back. A great success. It's incredible to see him have that turnover, and now he gets a head coaching job, and hopefully for him, it'll turn out better than it has for other previous Ravens, defensive coordinators who turned head coach, because the track record is not terribly great as far as getting big postseason success and making it to the Super Bowl. But best of luck to him. I mean, he's got a lot of talent. Obviously, going to be a tough rebuilding job there in Seattle. Maybe not rebuilding, but retooling. The kind of there. It's a good squad there, but definitely needs some work there to get them to be a contender.
Are we still allowed to be sad? I feel like this one, yeah. I mean, this one definitely hurts still a little bit. End of season emotions, particularly with this being the day after the Super Bowl. Man, just McDonald was special for sure. This defense was special. Certainly I do think we're gonna have a great guy, I think, replace him, who I am pretty excited about, but it hurts, man, that we weren't able to win it all with McDonald, because his defense this year was pretty special. But on the other hand, what I am looking forward to, though, some Seattle matchups against the 49ers and the Rams. I mean, we saw how those matchups were this year, and the Rams game, obviously, I mean, that was a shootout. It was a really exciting game. And, the 49ers game, I mean, it was a clinic by McDonald, really. So, good for him. Hopefully, he brings back Seattle, brings him a lot of success. Not that Pete Carroll didn't, but, it's kind of tapering off a little bit at the end. But, yeah, unfortunately, we'll get to a couple of the other ones. But, McDonald wasn't the only guy to leave for greener pastures. Pretty much a lot of the staff, I think, you're talking about Anthony Weaver going to Miami to take their defensive coordinator position, Denard Wilson to go to Tennessee as their defensive coordinator. There's your secondary coach, your defensive line coach, and then the linebacker coach is the one that got the promotion here, Zach Orr. So it's going to look very different this year.
I just need to point this out real quick, that the assistant offensive line coach, who looked like Greg Roman, is going to LA to be the O-line coach under Greg Roman. So that's fun.
There you go.
I still cannot believe that the Chargers brought him back, man. I want to know, slight tangent. Everyone who may still complain about John Harbaugh being hiring for nepotism, always hires his guys, but brother Jim literally comes back how many years after he leaves the NFL? 6, 7, however many years it's been since he's been a head coach for the 49ers in the NFL. Immediately rehires Greg Roman, offensive coordinator from 10 years ago. Jim's the guy, man. Jim's the one going back to the Greg Roman well. John, at least I can understand of Roman had a successful offense and a retread or something. That's a little bit different than nepotism, but Jim immediately came back and hired Roman, and I don't know how that's going to fit with the quarterback over there. Just Herbert, just blanking on the name. I have no idea how it's going to fit with him, man. Definitely a very different quarterback than Lamar, than Kaepernick, all the guys that he's coached. Taylor, if you want to throw him in there too. We'll certainly see, but it's just I think that's something everybody looked at. And they're like, you can't hire Roman. You can't hire Roman for Herbert. Don't do it. Don't do it. And what does he do? He does it anyway. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Definitely was a little surprised by that. Talking about Harbaugh's, man. Jay Harbaugh, special teams coordinator now under Mike McDaniel, or McDonald rather. So he got his Harbaugh connection in there. He did his prerequisite Harbaugh hire. And the rest of the staff actually not coming from the Ravens. So he didn't name an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. Ryan Grubb from the Commanders is coming over for offensive coordinator. And then defensive coordinator, I'm actually not that surprised maybe he didn't get a Raven because he said in his press conference he's going to continue to call defensive plays until, further notice. So I guess maybe people were, it's kind of like, it's almost like a Shanahan offensive coordinator where you're like, all right, how much are you coordinating? You're not calling the plays. So Aiden Durde is coming over from the Cowboys. He was their defensive line coach. So I guess the Ravens lucked out. I thought we were going to definitely lose some more people because of that, but seems as though if we do, it'll be lower level guys. And I haven't heard of Peep yet. So
yeah, I'll have to see. Like I said, I mean, hopefully, the good news is just with all the turnover we already have, it's good to keep some guys around. I mean, you have to wonder if maybe the Ravens says something to him like, hey, we'd be happy to have you go, but pump the brakes on, how many people are to come. We're not sure, but certainly does help. Yeah, I mean, a lot of position coaches that we're going to have to replace. This is really, it's funny, it feels like it's not really something that we talked about too much during the season of just how good all of the coordinators were on the side of the ball. I mean, we always talk about the offensive, defensive coordinator, but we don't really talk about the positional coordinators. But yeah, going into this offseason, I mean, with so many guys leaving to be able to get promotions elsewhere, it really was, in hindsight, an excellent staff.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and the thing that's crazy about Denard Wilson is that he was the defensive coordinator, kind of took a step down role, played an incredible role in creating, I think, a secondary out of scraps. I mean, we were so worried about this group, and then boom, the DBs looked awesome under his tutelage, and I think he's going to do great things in Tennessee. He was definitely talented. Thought he might be a candidate for us. And Weaver, everyone was like, oh, he might be a head coach. And Harbaugh was pumping him up at the conference when they talked about, having select Orr, I think. And yeah, he's gone now too. So all the internal candidates, that we thought might get hired, they all got picked up. There was no internal candidate because Orr was highly considering the Packers job. It sounded like it was his to take, and then Harbaugh was like, "No, you're not." I raised you over Roquan Smith.
Exactly. Now, was he linebackers coach, or was he going to be defensive coordinator? He was going to be linebackers coach, right?
No, he was getting interviewed for defensive coordinator.
Was he getting interviewed for defensive coordinator? Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I think we all know which was the right decision for him there. I mean, but yeah,
and it's not that
really
they're not
excited
bad.
to see.
I think they've been a good defense too. But yeah, I hear you.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's not meant to diss the Packers. I mean, but you're talking about, the Ravens, who obviously right now have a stacked roster and historically, will continue to retool that. I mean, that's a job you want to, that's a job that if, he's as good as I would imagine the front office thinks he can be in that position, he's going to be able to project to launch himself to do what McDonald's doing right now and get a head coaching opportunity in a couple years as well. Man, yeah, really excited for Zach Orr. It's still such a bummer. Just completely gut-wrenching to him, I'm sure, to see where his career went. I mean, obviously, he had that breakout year in year 3, 2016. Just a great season by him, 133 total tackles there, including 3 picks and 5 passes defended. But then at the end of that season, it was a shock to everyone. I remember retirement after he had that medical examination. The issue with his the vertebrae at the top of his spine, and the doctors uncovering that and noticing like this could be something that he was literally risking his life continuing to play football. So I mean, an incredible story to see that now he's getting an opportunity to be able to have the defensive coordinator job here in Baltimore and maybe be a head coach someday. And incredible. I mean, a guy literally myself and Alex age.
Dude, he's between us.
I know.
You know that?
That's what. Yep. Yep.
It's wild. There's not
literally
that many days.
same actual birth week as us. Currently the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. We feel old, but great to see guys out of the 92 doing big things in the NFL. And I mean, you know, I've got full confidence that he can do it because look, the Ravens, they're saying, look, they're giving him the keys, and literally this franchise has not missed on defensive coordinator. Certainly some of them better than others, but I mean, even if you look at the guys, like I'd say like maybe like you put like Dean Pease, Mike Nolan at maybe, you know, slightly a rung or two below guys like Marvin Lewis, Rex Ryan, even Wink, and McDonald, obviously. I mean, those were still really, really good defenses that those guys coached. They just weren't quite as dominant as some of the others this franchise has put together under other guys. So, I mean, it's big shoes to fill, but you know, you've got a homegrown guy in there who knows the Ravens way, who's played in his day with all-pro guys like Terrell Suggs, Eric Weddle, Jimmy Smith. I mean, it looks like a great move here. It looks like a great one, and I'm really excited to see what his approach to a defensive strategy is going to be compared to what we saw with McDonald. Is he going to do more of the same stuff, or is he going to have his own spin? You know, it'll be something really interesting to see.
Yeah, it's definitely you know, a little bit of a risky move, I think, just to go with someone with more, you know, less experience rather. But yeah, I mean, like you said, Peter, I really like it just from the fact of, you know, we know what Orr was as a player here. You know, I think he was, honestly, I'm trying to think of all of the undrafted linebackers that have gone through. I mean, gosh, there's so many of them, but I mean, Orr, I feel like if it weren't for his, you know, back injury that ended up, you know, forcing him to kind of retire, I feel like we would probably talk about Orr in the same breath as like a Bart Scott.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm trying to compare like, you know, Ellerby, like, yeah, it played for a little bit longer, but honestly, I feel like Orr's ceiling was a little bit higher than Ellerby. I mean, you've got like McLean, you've got a ton of those guys who like, you know, played for the Ravens for several years and were very productive and, you know, good players for us. But I mean, Orr with that second team All Pro, like, I mean, he was playing at a really, really high level. Even Mosley, you know, was also, you know, playing well. But even for a while, I think people were kind of like down on Mosley. They're like, oh, he can't, you know, he's not as good as, you know, pass protection or, you know, or pass coverage, for example. And, you know, 2016, people were talking about Orr as kind of like, you know, oh, is he better than Mosley this year? So I think that's really exciting. Like McDonald, I mean, he's going to be a younger guy, but, you know, it might pay off for you. And like you said, I mean, he's been here. He knows exactly what we want to do here. I mean, gosh, like, you know, if he could still technically be playing for us if, you know, he didn't have that back injury. So, you know, I think it's going to be exciting to see what he does. I think it's going to be great, obviously, for Roquan. I think it's going to be great for Simpson. I'm really curious to see how he approaches the secondary, though. I think, you know, that was something that obviously McDonald and with Wilson, I think they did a really, really good job. So yeah, going into this year, like a guy like Kyle Hamilton, really curious to see how he moves them around.
I definitely think it's wild that I forgot that Bart Scott had a second team All Pro. So they're basically identical, in my opinion, as that being a major accolade and kind of would have gone on. I mean, he was about to get a huge contract and everything, right? So definitely unbelievable amount of life that he's lived. I feel like I not only do I feel old, but I also feel young because like the guy, I feel like he's gone through so much life in these 31 years to become defensive coordinator and, you know, be the top of his field, so to speak, as an All-Pro, and then to lose it all and then have to like regroup and now be again at the top of the field. You know, there's only 32 defensive coordinators in the NFL, which is incredible. So absolutely. Congrats to him. I thought you brought up a great point as well, Chris. Jason from Huddle Up Films brought it up too, and doing a show with Ken McCusick about inside linebackers, that Trent Simpson has a huge opportunity here. You have a former inside linebacker going to be coach. It is not surprising to me at all to think, we're probably going to lose Patrick Queen, right? Like, let's assume he's gone. Trent Simpson's going to be the next PQ in this defense, and he might be asked to play 100% of snaps like PQ. Like if we want to stay in this committed nickel look and have Hamilton in the nickel and all that, like that could be a huge opportunity for him. And I think if anybody could teach it, it'll be Orr, and maybe that's one of the reasons we saw Trent Simpson playing so well and having those flashes in the last game of the year when he had some playing opportunity finally. And I'm super excited to see this defense next year and how it evolves. And also like specifically with one of the biggest holes from free agency coming up, maybe outside of edge, is inside linebacker. And it's like the perfect, marriage. So that makes me excited.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think when you talk about Simpson, we didn't see as much of him on the field his rookie year as we would have liked. He played well in that game against Pittsburgh, but let's be honest, we were expecting him to be a rotational guy, a guy who was a regular contributor on defense this year. He wasn't, Now, is that a matter of snaps? They wanted Malik Harrison in there more, or is that just a matter of his development? Hard to say, but if it is a matter of development, again, you love having a guy like Zach Orr be in there because, like we said, he was an undrafted guy. He had to go through that process of figuring out how to develop himself, how to adjust his game to an NFL that, he was kind of behind the eight ball in when he got there. And in a lot of ways, I mean, you want that in a coach over. I mean, of course, everyone's got excited, when Ed Reed had his coaching opportunity, wherever that was, I'm forgetting now, and it didn't go terribly well. I mean, there are some examples of star players that, are able to coach as well as they played in the NFL. Very few. A lot of the times, the former players are the ones that are successful coaches are the ones who had to do that struggle, and so they understand the grind. They're able to develop players better in that fashion. So obviously Simpson's probably already been doing some work with Orr from this year, past season. But yeah, like you're saying, it's just going to continue. It's continuing to look like a good opportunity for him to take his game to the next level is having Orr there, being the coordinator, helping him get in situations where, he can grow into that role that Patrick Queen is, basically vacated at this point.
Yeah, the only other thing, kind of mentioned it earlier, with the secondary coach and, Weaver also taking going to Miami, there's still some holes for these position groups. Definitely curious for who's going to replace Weaver. Just knowing the strength that we had on defensive line this year was really good. As far as I know, Chuck Smith, at least for the outside linebackers, he's staying, which is great. Obviously, that's another position group that was just played out of their mind this year. But whoever Orr wants to get on that staff to replace Weaver on defensive line, I think is going to be a huge hire, whoever that is. Especially if you're able to potentially tag Matt at BK. I think it'll be key.
Yeah, maybe that's the next thing to talk about. Like, what do you guys think is going to happen there? I don't think I want to sign him to a long-term contract, frankly. And I'm happy to hear other thoughts on that. But my thought right now is like, don't sign him to a long-year contract. Try to tag and trade him because you might get more value. But like, it is a risk because there is like, quote unquote cap implications, which, as I've mentioned before, I think is more a matter of accounting than actual implications. But it's definitely between the void years and having to re-sign people early to like give yourself better accounting, situations with that. And then this tag and trade situation, like there's a lot of really big moves that will be made in the next week or two. I think it's actually like end of next week that, need to be made to figure out what we're going to do going forward. I guess like we can't tag right away, but you might be able to read the tea leaves that we're preparing for it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll admit I haven't looked too much at the cap, the exact details of where the Ravens are at this point. Nor have I really looked to see like what would the going rate be for a guy like Matabike. And it's tough, it's tough because obviously there's only so many guys you can pay the big bucks to, right? So, I mean, I know, just off the top of my head, obviously guys like Marcus Williams has a big cap hit, Marlon Humphrey on the defensive side, Roquan Smith, obviously. I think Marlon's contract is something interesting to look at. I do wonder if there's going to be a restructure there, given the injuries that he had 2 of the past 3 seasons, if they'll work out something there with him. And either, there's others to look at as well. And I'm not going to continue to ramble here because I'll admit I have not looked into that as much as I would like to yet at this point. But I will say this. We were expecting Matabike is going to be gone. We expected that back in the offseason when they re-signed, Broderick Washington to his deal, which wasn't a huge deal, obviously, but it was something that made it look like, okay, they're going to keep Washington and move on from Matabike. I really think that it's a move that I think the Ravens should consider, giving him the big bucks. Now, that being said, how much is too much? I'm not sure, because he's going to get a huge contract from someone. But I think this is a different scenario than, say, when you were giving, I still like the move, but I know I'm in the minority of everyone who, their thoughts on giving Brandon Williams that huge contract that we gave him, right? I mean, I think that he was an incredibly important part of our run defense for years after that, but that was a contract, in retrospect, a lot of Ravens fans didn't feel too great about. But with Matabike, you're getting a player who is a lot more explosive, and his disruption at the line of scrimmage and the amount of sacks and pressures he got. I mean, you got to realize this year he by far had the most sacks of any Ravens interior lineman in team history. The only guy that comes close would be maybe Trevor Pryce in 2006, and that's just going to depend on exactly what position you say he was. I mean, he played more interior with Denver, but I think he was more of an outside guy with us. So if you're looking at that, I mean, look, the guy finished I think 5th in the league in sacks, first among interior linemen. If they give him a big contract, I wouldn't be upset with it, because he is one of the top defenders in the league. It's really just going to come down to, what does that do to everything else you want to do? Because you would already do have some big contracts. And also, hey, we got to figure out the left tackle situation too, right? So, and arguably, as important as a guy like Matabike is, left tackle, I would argue that's even more important for them to figure out what the future is there at that position.
Yeah, it's certainly tricky. I think if they were able to swing it, I would definitely want to tag him. Have him play another year. I mean, the big thing for me, obviously, continuously gotten better. The other thing with Matabike as well is has been pretty healthy, all things considered, for his 4 years here. Played almost every game. The snap count has continued to go up year after year. So there's a lot of things that I like. Just from his health, I think he can continue to be productive. And of course, if he has another productive year on the tag, I think that looks probably better for more of a long-term deal, especially kind of considering, like, at that situation, you probably have a little bit more cap freeing up, depending on, Stanley, Humphrey, some guys like those. I mean, those are 2 of the, top 5 guys in terms of cap. Obviously, you'll have Lamar's cap number and everything there, which is fine. But I mean, plenty of other teams work at, managing the caps for their, start players, like KC, for example. Like, you've got Mahomes and you've got Chris Jones at those, positions respectively. So I think the Ravens could do it. Now, as for, how to fit it in with the tag next year, it'll be a little tricky. I certainly think that there'll probably be some moves to be made, like, what do you want to do about Bowser, Ricard, things like that, of, like, you could get some savings back depending on what you want to do with those guys. So we'll definitely see. Of the 2, I feel like Matabike, if he were gone, that would be a bigger hole that we're talking about. We really don't have anybody to really take his spot. Travis Jones, although is really good, I don't really think he plays the same position as Matabike. And his production would definitely be really hard to lose. So
yeah, I mean, you look at tackles, there's not that many on the market. There are a couple people who might be good, but they also have had injury history and stuff like that. Probably looking to the draft, probably looking at the 30th pick with the tackle selection. So we'll see. But you're right. Like there's only so many ways to spend the dollars if you're not worried about running a tab into perpetuity, which would be my scheme if I was an owner. But I digress. I would it's a credit card bill that never comes due. It literally never does. It's like, if you want to spend 400 million on your team every year, you in theory could do it.
Right. But you have to remember though, Biscotti's a fiscal conservative and is opposed to that type of thinking, though. So
well, and frankly, none of them do it. It's like a pact almost.
Well, right? Like, yeah, right.
They're like, we're not going to actually spend that much money. We want to keep some money for ourselves.
It's always easy to spend someone else's money.
Indeed. So we're looking at tackle, and I think that's a good transition point with Stanley. The end of year press conference didn't offer too much from EDC. He said he was going to keep quiet about what he was going to do with Madubuike because he thought it worked well with Lamar. And then when they talked about Stanley, my joke that I thought was, if you looked on Twitter, people were either saying, he's definitely getting cut. Did you hear what he said? He's definitely sticking around. Did you hear what he said? So whatever your disposition was going into it, you could listen to him and hear that was the next move, which is the definition of him not saying anything, which is exactly what he was supposed to do in this situation. So, like, will he take a haircut in his salary this year? Will there be anything going on there? Potentially. Who knows? But I think it's one of those things that Stanley is going to be on this team, at least for next year. But it will be a part of a progress to go away from him, most likely, because the last year you can definitely cut him, save $20 million. It's kind of like Washington. I was looking at his contract while you guys were talking about it, and his contract's really interesting. He has no guaranteed money after next year, after 2024. However, because of the way like the bonus was set and his salary, that you couldn't replace him for cheaper. So unless he was really playing really bad, like the vet minimum is the same cost as what you're saving. So, or actually you might even be losing money replacing him. So you might as well keep him one more year. And then the last year is a completely like, do we want to save $4 million on the cap, or do we want to keep you around? So that's going to be the flexibility there. And there's a lot of those like expiring contracts too. If you look at the tackle situation, next year is the last year of Moses' contract. Do you want to extend him? Maybe that's the way you can make some money. Then you have Falele, who has 2 more years left in his rookie deal. So, like, if you lose Moses, you have 1 year of Falele, but then you're stuck again. You have no right tackle. So there's definitely a lot of decisions that need to be made about our tackle situation going forward because everyone's about to expire on their contract. McCary as well expires after this year. So everybody is coming due. And we have to figure out, who we're going to keep and what our plan going forward is.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Stanley, I hope he can come back. And by that, I mean physically. He was so dominant. He was so dominant in that game against Houston. Oh, man, it looked like he was back. He was his old 2019 self. And then the next week happened against the Chiefs. And it was just, unfortunately for him, back to the inconsistency that we've seen all year. I don't see them moving on from him this year, just for the fact it's the most important position in the game outside of quarterback, right? So probably they draft someone. I'd be really surprised if they don't draft someone within their first 3 rounds of picks, and that'll be a developmental guy. And Stanley will be there next year, and then if he's his old self, then they'll figure out how to work that other guy in there, assuming that he pans out. Or if that guy turns out to be a bust, or Stanley's at least adequate, maybe they keep him. I don't know, but it would really surprise me if he's not back next season. He showed some signs. Maybe one more offseason, he's able to finally get back. In my opinion, he showed that if he's healthy, he can still be a dominant player. He's still got that skill. It's just, is his body going to be able to do it? But yeah, I mean, going into next season with that big of a question at left tackle, I don't think that's what we want to do, considering we have a roster that we're continuing to try and get to a Super Bowl here. That seems like a really, really poor idea. And I agree. You look at the free agents who are available, I don't think you're looking at anyone who's going to be an upgrade over even a injured Ronnie Stanley. It's just those guys just aren't out there or projected to be out there at this time.
Yeah. All I can say is this offseason, I'm glad we got the quarterback under contract. Very different from last offseason. Certainly, I think there are going to be some decisions to make. As far as like who needs to come back and what contracts to extend and things like that. But yeah, like you said, Peter, I mean, this roster's has Super Bowl aspirations. So I feel like you kind of try to stay the course with the core that you've got. See who you want to resign if you can, if any. And then honestly, I mean, the most important thing to me is like the draft. If we can hit on a couple of guys that are going to make a difference for us, and really, contribute next year, I think that really helps kind of keep that window open for 24 and then keep it open for a couple of years after that for sure. I mean, again, just, look at like KC, for example, like, you look at one of their like huge strengths this year in their secondary, guys like Snead. I mean, he wasn't drafted last year, but he's a pretty young guy. I think he's on an initial contract. And then you look at McDuffie. I'll eat my words on that. I think McDuffie played out of his mind this year, in particular. He was, he was okay, like his rookie year, but like this year, like, yeah, he was definitely playing really good. Shout out Jason.
That play in the end zone against Debo to save a touchdown, and that was
a real deal.
It was a good play for sure. And yeah, I mean, he's rookie corner on his second year. Casey did a great job of drafting impact player like Karlaftis as well. Huge impact in that game. So that's what the good teams do, man. They have the really good core, and then they just supplement around it with really good drafts. So it's going to be key this year for sure. I can't wait to talk about it more.
Well, hey, I think Chris said the right words, that we're excited that we had Lamar Jackson under contract, and he was excited about it too. It was one of the first things he said during his MVP speech. He said thanks to God, and then thanks to getting that deal done, which got a good laugh out of the audience. And I think we can all say we're excited that is behind us. We're excited to see year 2 under Munkin and the scheme. And congrats to Lamar for finally winning the MVP. Was Adam Schwartz, creator of Devoa. I've been such a fan of Devoa this year, and like talking about it more on the show, just for him to do Jackson dirty. Unbelievable. One vote away from unanimous MVP for 2 times in a row, which is like, or for 2 times, which has never happened for a player. But yeah, congrats to him, man. That definitely well deserved, and just an incredibly special player.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I was surprised that it was that close to unanimous. I mean, just because, like we said, no one, including Lamar, really ran away with the award, which isn't to say that Lamar didn't have a great season. But I mean, the season that he put up in 2019, he was putting up numbers that quarterbacks, that rushing and passing combined, like really, I mean, no one else was doing that, consistently having 4 or 5 touchdown games. Those games didn't really come till the end of the stretch of the season, which is what wrapped it up for him. Let's be real, but still great to see him get that. And look, I mean, it's frustrating that we didn't get to see him in the Super Bowl this year, but I mean, the guy has so much talent. The Ravens have been in the mix, if not the number 1 seed at the end of the regular season. Every year he's been a starter, to the point that he's played in that year. Obviously, 2 of those seasons he didn't finish. But yeah, I mean, look, I think this year showed that he certainly has some things in his game that he needs to clean up on. There's certainly some throws that, if defenses take away what he likes to do and try and force him to throw deep stuff along the sidelines, stuff where maybe he needs to lead his receivers a little better as far as getting them open. Look, yeah, I mean, there's some improvements he needs to make, but I mean, you could say that about pretty much every quarterback in the league right now outside of Mahomes. I mean, they all got stuff that they need to work on. The Chiefs defense certainly exposed that with Josh Allen and Brock Purdy as well this year. So, I mean, I don't think the fact that, he has some stuff he needs to work on should diminish the fact that he had an incredible year. And I think the MVP very well deserved, and eventually Eventually, he's going to break free. I truly believe we're going to get a Super Bowl out of him, like he said we would. I don't know when it's going to be, but he's got too much talent for that to not happen.
It was pretty special to see him and and Joe actually come back, like get the comeback player of the year, man. Everyone thought
comeback
it was
player from the couch.
Yeah, everyone thought it was Hamlin's award to win, and
which it was
Hamlin's award to lose, rather. Yeah, and but I mean that's really cool. I mean it was really close, obviously, but that was pretty cool to kind of see them afterwards and catch up. I don't know. I'm sure it made Ronnie happy.
Yeah, I was wondering if Ronnie would have a comment on that, but he released a end of year best of hits, which was a really fun video to watch. It brought back some good memories of the year, as long as you're able to deal with the bad. Which I think maybe will be the last thing we would talk about on this episode is the KC Dynasty. They won last night, and it was a very tight game. There's a lot of opportunities for 49ers to have won that game, and I really do feel like they kind of let that one slip out of their hands, as is tradition. Like, if you leave the Chiefs around long enough, they will find a way, and they just didn't put them away. They had the special teams snafu, missed extra point, and there's definitely something else in there that I am forgetting about.
Just offensive ineptitude in the middle of the game.
Forgetting to run the ball. Yeah, after that, seeing Usher, they're like, oh, if he can glide, yeah, like that. Maybe we can either throw a ball to Ayuk, super deep or something. I don't know. Yeah, tough times for 49ers fans. Also, just a quick commentary. Like, what would you have done? All right, if there's this whole discussion about the 49ers that didn't fully know the new rules, which is fascinating because we know the rules and we're not paid by the NFL to know them. And I would always take the ball second, because unless the team that you're going against has the cojones to score a touchdown and then go for two, you always have the opportunity for sudden victory as a second. Whereas unless you basically have a perfect drive, you don't guarantee that third sudden victory that he was banking on for why he wanted to get the ball first. So I know I think, Peter, you mentioned there's a rest element, which is not invalid, but yeah, definitely. I was on the opinion, you got to go second. You want to go second if you have the choice.
I mean, for me, I think it all depends on the flow of the game. My thought in the moment was, yeah, I mean, you just had your defense on the field, and they just let up the team to get back and score a field goal. I felt that what I would have done if I was San Francisco in that situation was put my offense back on the field, try and do a ball control drive, give the defense a chance to rest, and then if you don't convert the touchdown, which they didn't, then at least you have an opportunity to try and win a field position battle there. You also put pressure on the opposition because they know, okay, this is actually sudden death. Like, if we mess up here, then that's it. Now, of course, I mean, at the end of the day, though, in this situation, I don't think it really mattered what San Francisco did. I think Kansas City is winning no matter what. Kansas City showed throughout the game time and time again, they were just better coached than San Francisco. They're better coached than Baltimore. They're better coached than Buffalo. It's Kansas City right now, you watch the games, they just do so many intangible things at key downs and key plays in games right now. And they just do it so consistently that they're just not affording teams the ability to make mistakes. If you make a mistake, you're not going to keep up. It's you got to keep pace with them. So, I mean, we can talk about the game theory about it, but I think in this specific instance, it didn't matter. KC was going to win either way. I think that San Francisco just didn't take enough advantage of opportunities that KC gave them in the second half. I mean, good gosh, I think they lost the Super Bowl after they went 3-and-out after that interception at the beginning of the second half. I mean, go 3-and-out after you get a pick on Mahomes in the Super Bowl and do nothing with. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was downhill from there. It was just a slow downhill fall from there from San Francisco. They played a great first half, but then after that second half, they just got out coached.
Yeah, man, it's so frustrating. ability to continue drives. It's like nothing really about the offense this year is like, it's not as explosive as it used to be. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm sure that's why people look at this team. They're like, oh, it's the weakest KC team because they're not as explosive, or, their defense isn't as good, or, whatever the excuse is. But their ability to just continue drives constantly, like, oh, it doesn't really matter if they're in like a third and short, third and kind of long. Like, I mean, as long as it, it's not like 3rd and 15 or 3rd and 20 or whatever, like, they're probably going to convert, and they're going to keep going. They're going to keep going. They're going to keep going, and eventually they're going to score. And their ability to just like, even in the passing game, like, you can know that like you've got a couple of yards to go, and just a little like pre-snap motion, get a guy open, get 8 yards, 9 yards, like, just consistently able to do that over and over and over and over again. It's so frustrating. It's just like, it doesn't, I don't know, you watch it and you're just like, it doesn't seem that hard. But I mean, I think you're right. Like, it, Reed, obviously, offensive mastermind, like, really, really good. And, obviously, Kelsey has been in that offense a really long time. Mahomes has, and the other guys on there, like, they just do enough that to just make it work.
Their gotta have it downs were remarkably consistent in conversion, and the plays would always be very good. And sometimes they give you more out of it. It's like a big third down. They throw a little crosser. Travis Kelsey, he has to turn it into 30 yards instead of just the 7 they needed or whatever it was, right? Or the read option they ran with Mahomes, and then he gets like 20 yards on the ground instead of the 5 they needed or whatever it was. Like, it was stuff like that where it's just like, whenever they had to have it, they not only got it, but they got it in spades. And then, the touchdown, once they get down there, they're like, okay, we score a touchdown here, we win, sudden victory. Like, boom, they pull out that play, and it's wide open, and all he has to do is catch it, and he freaking does. You're like, this ragtag group that like literally have dropped game-winning catches all year long. They just didn't drop them in this game. They were locked in. That was the thing. I think the narrative about this team could have been a lot different if the supporting cast wasn't so flaky. You remember in the opening game of the season, they lose because Tony was absolutely awful, caused so many picks, etc. Well, he was gone. He wasn't in the game at all. But at the same time, they just MVS at one time, like, if he just catches the ball, had an easy touchdown, drops it, stuff like that. They could have had 2 more wins on the record. They could have been, first seed maybe if that was the case. And you were talking about indifferently, even though they had some struggles over the year. Record at the end of the day is king. And if Mahomes is in first place, no one's going to say anything bad about him. So I think it's one of those things. Like, his supporting cast showed up in this game, and he's just inflappable. Like you were saying, Peter, there's really something to be said about how poised they are in those big moments, and it never seems too big for him. And I mean, why would it? He goes to the big dance every year. It's like 6 conference championship games, plenty of Super Bowls. It's just like the guy wins, and that's, you get experience, you get the confidence, you've done it before. Shoot, man, that's tough to beat. So we're gonna have to come guns blazing. I do truly feel whenever the Ravens do win a Super Bowl, there's like almost no chance that they'll face the Chiefs. Like, that game will have to come. So, yep. Stay tuned.
Just like the Patriots, man. Freaking Dynasty, like, unbelievable. We had to do the same thing against them in the early 2010s, 2011, 2012. We're gonna have to do it again. So, and that's what it takes, right? You always talk about, like, if you want to be the best, you got to be the best.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up. The next show you'll hear from us is the vignettes episode. We're always excited to do that. Good collection of little memories from the season, and a good way to look back on a team of many players who helped contribute to the first team in Ravens history to bring the AFC Championship to Baltimore. Gotta respect that. So we'll see you later. Go Ravens.